Thanks again for coming to, this is a panel I helped set up. I'm Tamara Chung. I'm a business tech reporter at the Colorado Sun. I co-founded 6 years ago. Previously was at Denver Post and various other publications as a tech reporter. So I'm in this weird place where tech is really exciting, but I also had to cover some of the legal stuff. And some of that is what we're going to talk about today. I've specifically invited these folks right here, and I'm going to quickly introduce them. First is Dr. Kelly Kennebrew. She is a psychologist. I met her on a story because she was testifying against Senate Bill 205, which is the one that proposed putting some guardrails on generative AI and the consumer harms it could have. We're going to talk a lot about this later. Matanya Horowitz is the CEO and founder of AMP, although it used to be called AMP Robotics. I first met him and what his company does one of my first stories at the Sun, it was on recycling. And I went to Alpine and they had this robotic arm picking out milk cartons or something like that from a conveyor belt of recycled materials. So, you hear those stats about how much recycling actually gets recycled. His company is working on a process for completely automating this using machine learning, AI, all that stuff. He's going to talk about that more. Suma Nalapati. I've known her too, probably since the Denver Post. She was the CIO of the state, and now she's CIO of Denver. She's also worked for industry. She was at Dish and a few other places. I can't remember right now without looking at my notes. And last week, she joined Mayor Mike Johnson's cabinet, right? And as CIO, she's been in charge of all the tech there. And last week, she helped host Den AI, which was the first city to ever host a conference on this stuff. And it was well attended. It was a really interesting event. And then we've got Adam Burrows. He is a venture capitalist. I've known him for a little bit, covering venture capital here in the state. He's interested in technology and AI. He has actually invested in AMP early on, right? And a few other really hot tech companies, like Magic School. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's helping a lot of teachers use generative AI. He may talk about this more. So let me skip over to Amy Bika, who is from the governor's office. She is the chief data officer. She is also working with, trying to figure out, actually, they just passed the policy, right? Statewide to figure out what AI they're going to use with employees and maybe roll out to us. So keep all that in mind. Hopefully we'll have time for questions. And now I am going to have them each go through and tell you exactly kind of what their AI niche is. And some of them have slides and videos, but I'm going to start with Kelly. So Kelly, tell them what you do.
Hi, folks. So I am a founder of a platform in conversation analytics. It joins a conversation and it gives you nudges on how to active listen more effectively. So I'm an organizational psychologist. I've been working with leaders for my career, and this is the thing that most leaders suck at, right? More as they get higher up in the echelons, but those sets of skills are the ones that need to be nudged along in a conversation, and they'll make the biggest impact. So I built this with a co-founder. Back in 2017, we were manually data labeling then and decided, let's wait till generative AI comes online. Let's shelve this for a bit. There's a pandemic coming. Took it back off, and now it's 2.0 time, and we're off and running and excited about it. So I'm in conversation analytics, generative AI.
Hi, folks. I'm Tanya Horowitz, the founder and CEO at AMP. So we are using AI to create next generation recycling facilities. Oh, great. So you can see a little video of one there. That's our facility in Cleveland. If you've never been to a recycling facility, what you'll see are lots of conveyor belts with people standing around those conveyor belts sorting material by hand. It's pretty unpleasant. It doesn't smell great. And it's fairly ineffective. It's, you can imagine, not the most thrilling job, so people don't always bring their best. We can automate that much more efficient, as you'd hope, and AI is really core to the technology. We've taught these systems to identify bottles and cans and cardboard and chicken and a bunch of things all the other wonderful things you put in the garbage bin, like diapers and all that good stuff. So really excited to be here and talk about AI.
Thank you.
Was I too fast?
Hello, everyone. As Tamara mentioned, I'm Sumana Lapati. I'm the Chief Information Officer under Mayor Mike Johnston's cabinet. I've been in technology for 30 plus years now, and I've seen the evolution of AI. The generative AI buzz is new, and there's a lot of conversations that we all need to have. And but I've been following natural language processing, conversational AI, neural networks, and all of that for quite some time. So the reason why I joined public sector, I switch back and forth between public and private sectors, is there is so much potential to leverage AI for social good, the responsible and ethical use of AI, absolutely underscoring the responsible and ethical. In Denver, we have many, many social problems. There's migrant crisis, there is homelessness, affordability, a lot of things that we do not have enough human power to just go and tackle by ourselves. So with the use of responsible AI, we want to ensure that we give the transformational work to our city employees and the transactional work to bots. So that's why we brought together several leaders last Thursday, including Reid Hoffman, co-founder of LinkedIn, Eric Schmidt, former CEO of Google, Phaedra Ellis-Lampkins, who is the CEO of Promise, a public sector-oriented AI company, and brought thought leaders, some of them who are here, to have conversations, crucial conversations on how AI can help us solve for social good. So that's what we're doing. We have guardrails in place, policy in place to make sure that our data is protected, data is governed. But how can we augment and supplement our limited resources with AI to get to outcomes faster, improve resident experiences, and most importantly, help the most vulnerable populations? So with that, actually, we've deployed what is Sunny, our chatbot platform on denvergov.org. And it is in 72 different languages, and it's in conversational format. If you think about it, if there is a person homeless and is going to lose their home, they're hungry, they come onto the website, and Sunny, our chatbot platform, actually can answer their questions on how to find shelters or food for that night in 72 different languages. If we had to do that ourselves, we have to have 72 different translation things, which is not possible humanly to have that kind of. And some people are very reluctant to call and say, hey, I'm homeless and I need help. So this is a more humane form of helping them, where they can put those prompts in the chatbot, and it's going to help them answer the questions and get to resources faster. Again, we monitor our large language model extensively to ensure that there is not hallucinations, that it's not giving the wrong answers, that it's not looking at the internet, but looking at our own resources, right? So for me, the use of responsible AI and the use of AI is not an either or question, it's an and question. Just given how limited our resources are and how can we leverage other things, any tool in our toolbox to help the most vulnerable populations. And also to make sure that the voices of the people that don't understand anything about AI are represented in the conversation. Here we are sitting, right? We have a lot of resources at our disposal, but we don't have, there are several populations within Denver that don't even know what it is. and we need to ensure that their voices are represented. People talk about algorithmic, discrimination and things like that. Yes, very, very important considerations. I'm an immigrant sitting here talking about AI, and if someone didn't take a chance on me one day, I wouldn't be here, right? And we want to make sure that in our hiring practices that we look for those kinds of things that may prevent people from getting the roles that they need and deserve. But again, we should know our data. We can't depend on the algorithms to be very transparent. We are in charge of our own data. We are in charge of, if you're walking around the building and seeing people looking exactly like you, that should be a question. You don't need an AI bot to tell you, hey, there must be something going on in your hiring practices. So I feel very passionate that with the right people in mind, with the right people at the table, we can use AI for social good. And we're taking a lot of advantage of that and learning, right? It's a journey. It's not, oh, we're perfect. It's progress. And we're doing quite a bit to help augment our resources. And I think nothing can ever replace human intelligence, but very passionate about using AI and other technologies for good.
Let me interrupt real quick. I forgot to ask, do most people here, are you familiar with generative AI? Yes? Okay. So, it's sort of, you can ask a question and instead of a website, it pulls up a really human-like response. And it's being trained on different data sets. And that's what Suma's talking about. I think, what those guardrails are on those data sets is kind of what a question was for the state legislation. But there's so much more it can do. And so these are the people to ask. But anyway, and that leads me to Adam, who really probably sees so much potential and probably gets lots of pitches and rejects them. Yes. So anyway.
It's like Shark Tank. No, not really. It's not like that. So Adam Burrows, co-founder of Range Ventures. We're a seed fund based here in Denver, and about 80% of our investments are in Colorado. We are Colorado focused. About 80% of our investors and LPs are in Colorado. And so we wake up every day saying, how can we help build big companies, big tech companies in Colorado, whether or not we're an investor? That's kind of the modus operandi for our fund. We get involved in everything local because we feel like we're evangelists for Colorado, and if the ecosystem wins, we win. And so we were really involved with the DenAI, with the mayor's office. We've been very involved with the legislation, and we'll talk about that later, that we think is a terrible law, and I can go into why. I'm not going to mince words on that. And I say that as somebody who's pretty progressive politically, by the way, just to give you the context for me saying why this is this terrible law. I'm not just the kind of corporatist over here saying that. I can go into the specifics of that. But Tamara is right. Everything that we are seeing now is AI. Every company that we are in our portfolio is incorporating AI in what they're doing, and the companies that we're investing in, the pitches we're seeing, it's AI first in everything they're doing. And this is not like crypto or Web3, if you guys have heard those terms. That's real speculative and lots of hand wavy stuff. These are real applications and real businesses today. And the best example of this, as Tamara mentioned, is a company in Denver called Magic School. They were just featured on CNBC today. We led their seed round a year ago. And this thing has taken off in a way I've never seen a company do before. What they do is they're a co-pilot, if you've heard that phrase, which is basically like an AI tool for teachers. Okay, K-12 teachers. They're now in DPS as of recently. They have over 3 million teachers who've downloaded their software, so it's already kind of gone viral. And what they're doing is they enable teachers who have a high degree of burnout today. So if you think about this, back up the problem, we all know teachers are paid too little, right? Everybody agrees on that. There's two ways to solve that problem. One is to pay them more. Well, we've been trying to do that forever and ever. The other way is make their job easier, right? And so that's what Magic School is effectively doing. The founder himself is a former teacher, principal, and it does a lot of the manual work that teachers have to do, the stuff they don't want to do. It's not just teaching kids, but writing IEPs, different leveling of quizzes and assignments and feedback for students, and just automates that. So their tagline is, we save teachers 10 hours a week. And it's working. And so, that's an example. Like, this is real. This is happening. People are buying this today and using it, and it's transforming lives in a good way. So I always say the thing with AI, it's interesting. The near and intermediate term is incredibly exciting, like just unabashed exciting. The long term is scary, like where this goes and the singularity and all that we can talk about. But in the near to intermediate term, it is incredibly exciting.
Hi, I'm Amy Bika, Chief Data Officer for the Office of Info Technology under Governor Polis. I have to say I share your excitement, and part of it too is I was a high school math teacher once upon a time, and so 10 hours a week would be life-changing for our students and for ourselves. So really excited to hear about this. From my perspective, also like Suma, share a lot of her comments, came from private sector into public sector really to make a difference. From my perspective, being a chief data officer, I originally was looking at it from that data perspective. How can we make sure that we can use data to improve the services we provide to constituents and also have better data for our legislators to make decisions? With the, AI and generative AI really coming to the forefront now, that's become a large part of my role. Also to see how can we use these great innovative ideas for the benefit of Coloradans, and at the same time make sure the appropriate guardrails are in place. I feel as in a public sector space, you have to really hold to a different model, a bit of a higher level of trust. And, it's not as much about making, the financial component, but really that high trust and service, especially for those who need it most. So really making sure that we're aligned in that space. I agree also, it seems like the big long-term picture sometimes seems scary, but we're like, what do we do now? We just can't put our head in the sand. So really trying to do a lot in a, experimental sense. At the state right now, we're piloting Gemini, Google's Gemini, because we are a Google shop. So we have 150 employees from every single agency. All agencies are representative, and from individual contributors to leaders using that in a safe space and providing that feedback with really, really positive results. And so that's what we're really trying to say is how can we, be innovative through controlled experimentation and then really start rolling things out.
Amy, I was thinking, can you expand any bit on actually what you're experimenting on with Google Gemini and what the agencies are doing, since these could maybe roll out to all of us someday?
Yeah. It's interesting. When we first started, right now we have tracked so far 1,800 use cases. What we did, since we only had 150 licenses, we made sure everybody had to go through some training before they could even get a license. And it's not as much technical training as it is how to look for bias, how to understand, making sure that we're not putting any identifiable information anywhere that we shouldn't. So it's those kind of pieces and parts. And the first use cases we got were more along of, I summarized my email, which is great, and collecting a lot of data around how much time it saved as an individual contributor. So 72% of people, we're really tracking all these metrics, 72% of people have said that it saved 2 hours or more a week, 50% even higher. So we've had great, some of those are doing, someone say it saves me a week, so it's kind of hard to measure that. But what has really been important is the increased level of creativity people have seen. It's not so much that it's made my job faster. It's just made my output so much better. And I'm able to do things and produce a result that I never thought of before. And the other component has been around accessibility. That has been such, a amazing component I don't think we expected. Everything from a blind individual on the team saying that I really felt like I could see the ocean by that description, which is going to be better than a person just putting, alt text behind a picture and saying blue water or something, right? So it's a really, really rich experience. And I think a lot of our, neurodivergent employees and rolling that out to individuals in the public is really going to make a difference that we didn't see as much.
Thanks. Before we get into anything too controversial here, I did want to just ask you guys, what are your favorite uses of AI today? I mean, that you're using or you're waiting for, but more current. So whoever wants to chime in, we've got 2 mics.
I'll give 2. One is sort of, both are professional, but we're using generative AI for coding internally. So anybody who has touched software and code and has played around with these tools, I think has had this experience of just being absolutely amazed at just how powerful individual developers are with the generative AI tools. You sort of have people now who are twice as productive, like literally twice the output or 5 times the output, and just producing flawless code and all this stuff. It's really quite exciting. And then to kind of shill what we're doing, we're using AI to clean up organic waste in a way that hasn't been possible, and actually creates some value in organics that hasn't been there. And so for the company, deploying it that way, but we're very much deploying these tools internally in a way that I think a lot of organizations are.
I'll start with a fun one and then we'll go to. We travel quite a bit, so using just ChatGPT to travel your itinerary when you're going to a certain place is so much cooler and faster, and it gets you all kinds of ideas, and then you can fine tune it, right, to make it your own and personal and all of that. But I'm fiercely passionate about women in STEM and women in technology. There's not a whole lot of representation of women of color in STEM and technology, and especially at the leadership level. So I find it my life's mission to increase that, to as much as possible. So I mentor a lot of young women, and they ask me for resume help. They ask me for how can I get into coding? They're sometimes very intimidated. So using ChatGPT to craft the resumes faster and better and simpler. So I'm able to mentor a lot more young women now because of that, and also help them with coding, getting them introduced that it's not scary. It's not like, something that you should be taking of. Nothing against DU. We want the 4-year college degrees and all of that, but you can be in an art field but still learn programming, right? And that will actually help you enhance your art and all of that. So for me, those are the best versions of personal uses of AI that I found very, very helpful.
There's 2 things that I'm currently excited about. One is something called Notebook LM. Does anybody, we have some nods? Yep. That's pretty fun, right? And you can have these podcasts created of any topic, and it sounds very realistic. So you upload whatever document you want, and it'll create a custom podcast with 2 people that sound very, very lifelike on your content. It takes your own data and just creates notebooks you can sort, sort of a custom GPT. The other is I'm recording a lot of conversations with my mom, and she does a lot of Zoom calls, and I'm having her record those Zoom calls because when she dies, I want a digital twin of her. So that's content to create a digital twin of my mother.
Anyone else? I could add that as a tool, I do a lot of data in my stories, and but sometimes the data on charts is, I have to copy and paste, and then I have to go through that whole process of getting it to fit in a spreadsheet properly, and ChatGPT does that super fast. So, so was there anyone else first? Okay.
No, I'll just jump in with a couple. And I wanted to mirror what Suma said earlier too about language translation. We're rolling that out with the new early childhood applications, so people can be multiple languages. I think that's such a rich one. And then I think a fun one that might be coming out probably will be coming out of the state pretty soon too, is the ability from the tourism site, instead of people having to look at every small town and see what's going on, to be able to bring that all into Colorado tourism and be looking at, that collaborative experience of what's going on and bring it together. And that's where we're finding to be those safer use cases with the public data, but also really useful and exciting.
So to talk about Senate Bill 205, this is the law that was proposed in the last session. And, when it had its first hearing, it was probably like 3 weeks before the end of the session. So me being someone who doesn't cover politics and policy all that often, I just thought, oh, this isn't going to pass. It has to go through too many things. But it passed. Again, that's where I met Kelly, and I talked to several other folks on it. And the gist is, it's there to protect consumers, right? Because on the side for it, the idea that AI was training on potentially biased data. Was that going to be used to decide if someone gets an apartment or gets a loan? And there have been cases in the past of pretty, remember that Microsoft Twitter bot was racist, really. But this has really changed a lot. And what happened was when I met Kelly, she was with a group called the Rocky Mountain AI Interest Group that had only started after ChatGPT 4 was found, was unveiled, and that was in late 2022, and now it has 1,700 members. So a lot of them opposed it, but there was testimony, obviously for it, and it passed. It got signed into law by Governor Polis, and then a few weeks later, about 200 tech executives wrote a letter and I think met maybe with Polis, and that, which includes Adam, by the way. And they talked it out, and he came out with a new letter or new statement saying, this is still a work in progress. We're creating a task force as part of the bill. And some of these rules and what's going to happen, they're going to be talked about like right now as we speak. And I think that's something Amy can address. But, we've got a panel with government officials and startups and technologists. They're all technologists. So to me, I'm like, oh, should I toss this out here? Who would want to take this first? Because I think maybe we should start with Amy. What happened, Amy?
Yeah. Amy in the hot seat, who does not have a political background. I always laugh. I keep reminding people I am a math major and a data professional. And I've spent the last few months working more with, writing our policy at the state. And then of course, following the same legislation. I will say, I don't think there's anyone who would say the legislation is great and perfect as it stands. So I think that's one thing that's just clear. And also, that it would be great if there was federal legislation. And I just came back from 2 days with the National Governors Association on AI, and everybody's looking to that federal level. But, it's slow and it's not going to be here anytime soon. And so, what do you do in the meantime? So I do think Colorado's always been on the forefront of these kind of technology topics. And, of course, sometimes that forefront comes with taking a few hits. There's also definitely a goal of, if there was federal, that would be it. And then we would not be trying to do anything differently, because I think it'll be a nightmare for any tech company to have to deal with 50 different state legislations, right? How would you even manage? But I think it's as much a signal to the federal, hey, we need to do something. So yes, the intent of it is for consumer protection and to ensure, that there is a place to go if there's bias, in your AI. Are there issues with the language and some of the computational limits that are in it, and kind of the vagueness of high risk and consequential decisions? Absolutely. So there's a task force. I don't know if you have that slide up, but I did put a website here. So there has been a task force that's been established to modify the language before it goes into effect for 2026. There's about 20 members on that. Our CIO, David Eninger from OIT, is part of that. But they're open meetings, and I would encourage anybody who's following this topic to please listen to them. I do think the goal of everybody in that room there is to make sure that we have appropriate protections where needed, and make the changes needed too. So other than that, I'm willing to field what comes next.
I'm hoping Adam can chime in here,
you
because
my opinion. Yeah.
Well,
I'm not going to hold back.
You were part of that letter, and what was really wrong, at least from why did you guys come out with that?
Well, and I will say, so both, Governor Polis, Attorney General Phil Weiser, and Senate Majority Leader Rodriguez all signed this letter too, where we, they basically said, hey, we agree, here are the things that need to get corrected in the law specifically. And so hopefully those are what will actually happen. But from our perspective, right? We are always, and a bunch of other people in the community, like we in Colorado Tech have a bit of a chip on our shoulder because we don't get a lot of respect. We're like the Rodney Dangerfield of tech ecosystems. Like PitchBook had Colorado venture capital deals in dollars, number 5 in the country the last 2 quarters. So that's after the big 4 tech market, like coastal tech markets that we have. But whenever I'm out every day, we're out talking Colorado, we're great, we're on the rise. And nobody believes us in the valley. They're like, oh, I didn't know that. Wow, really? Oh, wow. And I'm like, yeah, look at the data, right? Because what's great about Colorado, we don't do a lot of chest puffing like other markets like Austin, for example. Everybody's like, really? You guys are bigger than Austin? Wow, no idea. So for us, we're doing this. And then this law comes out that's super vague, where you read that, you're like, oh my God, like AI is dead in Colorado, like in a very broad interpretation of it. Every single company who's doing anything with AI might be subject to this law, have to go through all these government bureaucracies and consulting fees. And they're like, oh my God, this just shuts down innovation. And a lot of we heard from a lot of prominent VCs and technologists on the coast that are like, wait, I heard all this great stuff about Colorado. What? You guys are closed for business. And we're like, no, it's going to all get worked out. It's all reasonable. And it will get worked out and everybody's reasonable. But that was one of the issues with kind of issuing such a broad, amorphous bill out of the gate. Everybody is in favor of no discrimination. Like there's nobody who says discriminate. Let's have discrimination in tech and AI. Like nobody is in favor of that. But the gist of the bill and the biggest problem with the bill, in our opinion, is it creates a proactive regime where you, as somebody using AI, and that needs to be kind of more specified, and everybody agrees on that, need to do something proactive to say, I'm going to go to the state and say, there's no way that my AI can be discriminatory. Okay? That is different than any other business process or practice today. If I have a company that I've been operating and I have a big sales team, 1,000-person sales team in Colorado. I used to work at a company where we ran a 1,000-person sales team, and we've got all kinds of training materials for that sales team. I don't have to go to the state and say, here's all my training materials. Here's how my sales team conducts itself. No, if there's discrimination in how that sales team is operating, that's going to come to light after the fact. And there's lots of laws and mechanisms to enforce that and punish that company and reasons why we wouldn't discriminate in what we do today. So we look at AI as it's just another business process that you're implementing on the back end. And the output of that cannot be discriminatory. But to make everybody go proactively register with the state ahead of time creates gigantic headwinds in businesses and innovation and people who are, one of the great things, like Magic School, in the most egregious reading of this, which again is not going to happen, somebody like Magic School who gets started on a shoestring couldn't get started. And that's why we thought it was bad law. But again, I'm very confident that it's going to get resolved in a good way. Sorry, long answer to short question.
No, that's great.
There you go.
Kelly, I think she's a psychologist first, AI founder second, but she has some thoughts.
Listen, I also don't want to get up here and talk about a law that's already passed and they're working hard to make it better. But I will say this. I think a lot of people are concerned about this notion of bias. And as a psychologist, listen, one of the reasons we started Minerva was to tamp down the impact of human bias. So at least you have a tool in artificial intelligence that can show us the bias. If we just stay with where we were, then hiring decisions and all these other consequential decisions are being made without knowledge of any of that. That's just, well, I went with my gut, or, this is how these big decisions are being made now. So I think everybody should be worried about bias, but if you are worried about that, you should be first looking in the mirror and then looking at humans and how we are doing this already every second of the day. So to put laws in place that make it difficult for us to right wrongs is a wrong. And that is why I testified against this bill. I'm not somebody who was involved in politics until this either. And it was very strange to be on generally the political left and be agreeing with the political right on this matter and saying, yeah, this makes no sense. This is not innovative. And it's just a reaction that I think is based on ego. It's somebody who wants to get a name for themselves in the form of Rodriguez. I will say that. So yes, he did some good stuff with privacy laws, but not with this. And the panelists are exactly right. This is squelching innovation in this state. I'm on planes and people are saying, oh, I'm not investing in Colorado now because of this law. So great if the task force can make it better. Amy, I certainly hope you're going to do that. But the rest of us in RMEG, Rocky Mountain AI Interest Group, we're very worried about this. And we hear what happens with task forces not being that changeable, that the law's the law. And to put some window dressing on it may be what happens here. Convince me I'm wrong and I'll be happy for that. But these are all consumers, all of us. I'm a consumer as well as a founder. None of us want the bias, but we want things to get better. And this is why we want AI in the game to help everything get better, to help you have less bias in everything that impacts you. That's what I have to say about that.
I was going to add that the law passed in May, but by then, the city of Denver already had an AI policy. I believe the state, did you wrap that up in August? Or was that finalized in August? A generative AI policy.
Late July, August.
Okay. Yeah. So, but when I was talking to Suma, I remember, the city's policy is, we're not going to use this to make critical decisions, I believe. Do you want to talk about that more? Like what, this apparently has been a topic of concern with consumer advocates, because there's still a lot of big tech out there that seems like it hasn't been behaving. And I mean, even the Colorado AG, we heard it from him last night, and he sued Google, Meta, and I think TikTok. So, part of this is how much is fear? How much should we believe this state is going to take care of us? And anyway, so go ahead.
Having worked at the state, Tamara, I can tell you that the state does not have enough resources to do this front loading of all the decisions that Adam talked about. There's simply not enough resources. They have around 1,800 applications with 100 things that they're responsible for. So I don't think they will have resources to vet this in the way that it needs to, right? So again, where is our human intelligence in all of this? We own our data. We own our biases, right? And we should be doing something about it. The tool is just that. It's a tool. So let's all look at it objectively, right? And use the tool the way it's supposed to be used, and use our human intelligence to make the right decisions. That's what we as leaders our people are looking to us to be there to make those decisions in the right way, using the right data. If your data is wrong and if it's biased, you'll get garbage out, right? Garbage in, garbage out. It's as simple as that. And you can blame technology all day long, but if your people, your policies, your process is not in line with technology, it's one end of the equation. It's not holistic. So that's what, again, let's use the DenAI conference was just that, right? We brought educators, we brought academic institutions, we brought the Reid Hoffmans of the world, right? Again, it's to understand from the big tech, are they even thinking about this, right? Are they thinking about sustainability? Are they thinking about ethical considerations? And they truly are. And Reid said himself that, this is something that, to Adam's point, that it's in the intermediate, yes. Long term, we all need to be worried about this, right? And be thinking about this, and it's an evolving field, right? So I would say, let's use our human intelligence in the way that it's supposed to help the people that we are using the technologies and the frameworks for. Let's not blame technology, because technology by itself is just a tool.
I just want to say one thing to answer your question. My understanding was big tech in favor of this. Yeah, big tech in favor of this.
Yeah.
Why? Because big tech is like, hey, we're happy to go pay millions of dollars in consulting fees and regulation to stop all the startups and innovation from happening. So that's just something that's a little bit counterintuitive. When we heard about this law, we talked to somebody, they're like, oh, we thought tech was on board with this, right? We talked to Amazon, we talked to Workday. Like, yeah, of course they are. So that was something that's a little counterintuitive.
Yeah, no, that's true. And that's why I was thinking, it's really the startups that are the test ground for this. I mean, if I remember the first time I used Google, was it in the late 90s? And I'd been using Yahoo before that. It was just such a difference. It has, obviously, Google has had time to develop and change and do different things. And it seems like what seems to be happening here is clamping down on what Google would have been doing back then. I don't know if I like Google today. There's lots of controversy around what they're doing with our data, but some of these people are the ones who are making policies that are going to affect all of us. So think of questions if you have them. But before we go to questions, do you want to say anything, Matanya? One thing about Matanya is I don't know if we call it old AI, but I mean machine learning, sensors,
Vintage.
He mentioned that he's not using generative AI too much in the actual process of figuring out sorting recycling and stuff, but his employees are using generative AI. He mentioned that to code faster and.
But I think what might be interesting here is we had an experience when we started deploying robots into Europe, and it was actually GDPR. So you'd kind of imagine, okay, how does GDPR affect garbage? Well, these things kind of have their way of working around to be very broad. And for us, it was, we're basically taking pictures of garbage. There may be something where we take a picture of someone's mail, right? And so you could imagine now that's personally identifiable information. It sits in our database, and we didn't get permission from that person. And it was it's absolutely a non-starter for the waste company in Europe to go and get a signature from everybody, and everyone who has their waste contract to agree to something like this. And so the practical result for us was we basically just decided to blur the European data, nominally it kind of makes sense, but now all European systems that rely on AI are going to be a slight performance deficiency compared to robots in the United States or around the rest of the world. And so there's both that's sort of like that fact. And then there's, I think the experience of going through it, which was, we talked to our lawyers, and so and they say, hey, here's a risk. And then, and they bring on the specialized lawyers. Okay, so now we're having, several meetings, thousands, now tens of thousands of dollars start accumulating. And the advice we get is, oh my gosh, you should just never do this, right? Like, why are you doing anything? Which is the natural defensive response. And so now you have, now you're spending a lot of time arguing with the lawyers, trying to decide what's a conservative way to do this that actually sort of protects the intent of what GDPR is trying to do. But your lawyers are telling you don't do anything, like that's a safe thing to do. And, so we got to a place which was fine, but you can kind of imagine, I think, to Adam's point about big tech versus small tech, as an individual, like if you're just a small team of 3 people, especially if you haven't gone through this kind of cycle a couple times, you'll be sitting there and you'll say, oh, I have to submit something to the Attorney General. Now I'm going to go talk to a bunch of lawyers. So a couple $1,000s. And I'm basically saying, I don't think this thing is biased, but you know enough about the industry that there are academics whose sole job is to basically come out with papers showing all the different ways you could create bias. And so post facto in 3 years, someone going to identify bias in my system, oh man, now I'm really worried. And the Attorney General's coming after me. I'm kind of painting a little bit extreme, but when you're a small group, right, this is very much the sort of tactical logic you think through, and it's intimidating. And I think this is, in a practical sense, this starts to become the hurdle that people have to face down, and I think just leads to bigger companies being the ones who to do this kind of work. So although it wasn't directly in this, it's just, I think, an informative experience of the practicalities of it.
Anyone else want to say anything?
Say one thing. The genie's out of the bottle, right? The industrial cognitive revolution is happening, just like when the industrial revolution happened and things shifted. This AI thing is happening. It's up to us to own it and to shape it and to make sure that every voice is represented in that revolution, and that we are the leaders that will hopefully shape it in the right way, using, again, people, process, policy, and technology collectively rather than in silos, and help the most vulnerable population's voice be represented in that conversation.
So I think that from a lot of the practical examples of how generative AI is being used, what I've heard is it speeds things up. A lot of those boring tasks. I was talking to the mayor of Denver, Mike Johnston, last week, and he shared some examples of the I wishes. He mentioned with the migrants in Denver, of course, those seeking asylum, they had to spend hours and hours helping, with lawyers and translators to, file the applications and stuff like that. And his idea to me was just saying, what if we could just record them? Then AI would take the necessary information, fill out the forms, and so then it presents all that stuff to the lawyer, because they would still need to hire lawyers and stuff like that. And that would probably turn a 40-hour process of just filling out a form to an hour, or whatever the attorney would charge. So my next question is really, what do you hope AI can do, or generative AI, or what do you wish? What do you think is actually possible, or maybe not even possible yet, based on the technology available today? I mean, you guys are all looking for solutions for current problems, but there's probably some big problems you're like, oh, can't touch that yet. But you guys thought about?
Yeah, I'd give one perspective, which I think is well aligned with what people said, which is it makes a lot of this technology makes the unscalable scalable. Like, so in our case, it's basically robots sifting through every piece of garbage from an entire city. Like, you need an unrealistic number of people to do that, but mechanized machine. And so similarly for the coding, you're sort of making coding a much more scalable thing with these generative techniques. And I think it's a shame if society can't take advantage of that in domains outside of code, like filling out forms as sort of basic as that seems, but you're just sort of getting sort of paperwork and drudgery sort of scaled in a way that it otherwise is impossible. I'm very excited for that broadly.
I'll jump onto that too. When I look at state services, the backlog of, the ability to find the people who need those services and connect them to those services to really bridge that gap would be amazing. And a lot of it is just the logistics of filling out a form and the time, and getting that whole ecosystem to work smoothly, that everybody's so efficient that people get what they need. And then personally for me, I take that to a global scale, right? And I think that this will become so powerful. And that's where I think it's important now to make sure that power is channeled towards the greater good and for all of humanity, and be able to spread the wealth of that knowledge, and not just, monetary wealth now, but the knowledge that AI can provide for everyone.
I'll say one specific that I've already started to use, but I'm very excited about where it's going, which is in legal. I've already used ChatGPT myself to do some basic contract amendments. And just, if anybody's been in business, the amount of time things get slowed down because of very basic documents that need to get drafted and signed. And I think that is very quickly going in a direction where a lot of those basic documents, just like forms, are going to be able to be kind of self-serve or done by AI. And so lawyers can obviously then be freed up for the important stuff, where they're actually using their judgment and opinion, not just drafting templated documents, and slowing down business. So very excited for that.
All exciting use cases. I'm personally very excited about science and treatments for cancer. The generative AI is being used in clinics and labs to get to the treatments for cancer faster. I think what they said is maybe in the next 5 years, we may find the cure to cancer if, again, all the clinical trials go well, right? I mean, not all forms of cancer, of course, but there's lots of progress being made on that front. So I'm very much looking forward to that. And we all need it, right? With the amount of tumors and everything that are progressing throughout the human body, I think anything we can do to prevent disease, prevent cancer, or find treatment is something that I'm personally very excited about.
Who else is excited about it? Anyone have any questions for our panelists? Okay, I'll just.
Hi, my name's Sam Tassig. I'm on the Colorado SIPA board with the State Internet Portal Authority. Thank you for speaking at our conference on Monday. And we got hundreds of grant applications related to AI project funding from cities, counties, school boards, state agencies this year. And many of these mayors, managers, city managers, IT managers were looking for guidance, for thoughts, for support from the state and their peers. And so my question to each of you is, this is where AI is going to meet the road for a lot of people, for the citizenry of Colorado. What can the state, what can the private sector, what can large city peers, the largest city in the state, and what can advocacy organizations do to support this AI revolution at a very local level where it is happening? And it is happening without a whole lot of guidance or support, at least in the view of many of these mayors.
I'll jump onto a little bit of that, but I'm sure my colleagues here have a lot to add. One thing from the state perspective, we have created a community of practice where we meet every month for that guidance and knowledge sharing, and we are in the process now of expanding that out to the city and county levels and getting a group together for that knowledge sharing. Another component too is the training that we're offering to the state employees. The website that I had up before about AI guidelines, we're making that training available to everyone. So just from a training perspective and knowledge, I think that's a component of where it can initially start. So it's just a very grassroots and basic things, but I want to kind of put a plug out for that training. We have a lot of questions at SIPA from counties. How can you help me?
Anyone else have a question?
Good morning. I'm Lapo Salucci, member of the faculty here at Cornell. I wanted me to ask, and whomever can answer this, what are the plans for delivering services to the citizens through the help of AI? Like you mentioned, filling forms and all that kind of stuff. What is next for citizens of all walks of life, of all means, and all that kind of stuff to make our lives better?
So we started out with a policy, guardrails first, so that we don't just use things off of the internet for GPT and others, but use it within our encapsulated versions of our cloud, so that it's manageable, right? So those are the guardrails we put in place. Again, we're constantly looking at our vector databases and fine tuning and context windows and all of those things with the technical team. Some of the examples I mentioned, again, Sunny, our chatbot is live, and it's on our Denver Gov website, and it's integrated into our Salesforce and ServiceNow backend so that the case IDs get generated faster. And there's a trackable mechanism to make sure that the case gets resolved, whether it's your trash pickup or finding a homeless shelter tonight, all of those things, again, and it's available in 72 different languages. We have a tech bot within our service desk platform to make sure that, again, our tech services are limited. So it's actually helping, doing password resets and things like that on the fly. So there's an internal platform. We are working again with the work authorization clinics, the things that Tamara mentioned on getting to paper processing faster so that we can get people onto jobs quicker. Again, making sure that the documentation is all followed. We're also looking at various things like, public safety resources. They have to fill an inordinate amount of paperwork. So we're trying to see if we can use generative AI to fill this paperwork faster so that the police and public safety teams can actually work on the actual cases rather than fill these soul-sucking paperwork things that they need to do, right? So that's one of the things. We're also looking at arts and venues, application forms, right? So after the Den AI Summit, we've gotten enormous amounts of interest from our agencies, which was truly the need. I mean, it's not just a technology-led transformation, but a business-led transformation. And to answer your questions, we're actually, again, it's not public yet, but creating a center for enablement so that we have the advisory board, the people that helped us put the AI for Denver AI, and have all of them at the table while we triage these use cases and see which county or which city may help me creating those policies, guardrails, whether it's on the NIST frameworks or things like that. and also be able to get to those use cases faster, working with the private sector, working with the startups, and co-creating solutions, and working through the IP aspects of all of that. So more to come on that, but definitely there's so much interest in, especially in the manual processing that's taking so much of people's time.
I can add on the private sector and kind of what we're seeing with startups. There's a co-pilot for everything. So any profession, there's a co-pilot. It's kind of the acknowledgement in what's happened in the last 12 months that at first there was this prevailing wisdom that ChatGPT, Gemini, kind of the broad platforms are going to just be the end game. And there's been a shift in that over the last year with companies like Magic School and others that are very vertical specific and saying, oh, actually, there's going to be these vertical specific applications built on top that kind of are tailor-made workflows for whatever you name the profession. And so we just our most recent investment is a company in Denver called HappyDoc that is a co-pilot for veterinarians, right? And you're seeing it. We've seen pitches for literally every vertical will have a co-pilot. Yeah, the co-pilots will all connect. And then I think like the general solutions, the chat GPTs, will get better and better and better at providing a like kind of general executive assistant or co-pilot for all of our day-to-day lives. Think of all of us having like an EA in our pocket all the time. I think is where that's going over time.
Oh, okay. Hi, my name is Dana Stone. I'm a PR communication consultant here in Colorado. One of my clients is based in San Francisco, and they focus on financial fraud. And they are using AI and ML to help with some of the investigation process. So for me, I see it as a positive for AI. However, I'm looking at it. I'm trying to think if I have the right question here. But where does the line get drawn between what the national level does with all of this innovation and where the line draws for states? Because to me, like I remember when in the hospitals, I'm going to date myself, but when hospitals were able to do x-rays and they were like, if someone broke their leg in Colorado, but they live in Utah, where they were able to share that information to their regular doctor, I could see at some point AI and ML being able to do that with fire and rescue, to your point, like sharing those best practices and how we do that. But where does that line get drawn between how much we're supposed to be using our resources to really figure out this answer, and where does the state fit in? I mean, the national level fit in, because it's like we're all trying to fight the same fight and trying to get to the right answer. But if we're all in it, how are we all coming together to make it the right answer? Does that make sense?
I can say a quick comment. The line is very blurry, and it being at the state, there's a lot we do even with our state programs. I mean, we run our Medicare program here locally, even though it's a federal program, right? So there's a lot of things that are, they're state driven, but county administered. So the lines are blurry in general. And that's where I think we try to collaborate where we can and take forward what we can, but it's not that cut and dry. And even, I think the example you were using of, you break your leg here and does it show up somewhere else, even in that identity front, which we're working a lot on constituent identity. And it's the same kind of thing. There's a tool called login.gov. Some of you might have used it if you have like a TSA or for Social Security. And now they just started letting us use that as a state, just being in the last 18 months. And now they're just very recently saying about counties. But getting everybody to surround and get on board with it is tricky. So it's not easy, but I understand what you're saying. But we try to blend it in much as we can. I'll use resources wherever I can get them. So.
Well, if you could believe this, it's 11:14, so 1 minute left. I wanted to say thank you, and thank you for attending, and thanks to all the panelists for showing up and sharing and being so nice about it and not having like a uncivil discussion here. Catch my reporting. I mean, I write about this stuff. Feel free to email me. You might be able to grab some of these people while they're still here today. So if I don't know, let's give them a round of applause, okay?